management in Trinidad and Tobago. As you are aware, nearly half of the world's food security relies on the availability and management of nitrogen and phosphorus. These essential nutrients are the backbone of agricultural productivity, yet their management poses significant challenges. Excessive nutrients from fertilizers, together with fossil fuel combustion and wastewater from humans, livestock, agriculture, and industry, contribute to the pollution in air, water, soil, and marine environments. This pollution results in biodiversity loss, fish population declines, ozone layer depletion, and increased global warming potential. In many countries, nutrients-related policies are fragmented and incoherent, leading to unquantified trade-offs and hindering efforts to achieve cleaner water, air, climate change, medication, and biodiversity protection. In response to these challenges, United Nations Environment Assembly adopted two resolutions on sustainable nitrogen management. These resolutions call for improved policy coordination and accelerated actions to reduce nitrogen waste by 2030. Especially, the Union Resolution 5/2 requested the UNEP to provide support to member states in developing national action plans. UNEP is helping 11 countries in developing those action plans with ongoing support to Sri Lanka and Trinidad and Tobago. Today, we are very pleased to have experts who have contributed greatly to the development of the National Action Plan on Nitrogen Management in Trinidad and Tobago to share their experience. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to a productive and insightful session. Now I would like to hand over to my colleague, Stephanie Vanderpool, to moderate this webinar. Stephanie, please.
Thank you, Ning. Thank you for your opening remarks and setting the scene for today's webinar. Welcome, everybody. I would like to first invite Ms. Gabrielle de Souza to introduce the overview of the development of the National Action Plan in Trinidad and Tobago. Ms. de Souza is a soil scientist at the Research Division for the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries of Trinidad and Tobago. She's the focal point of the UNEP Working Group on Nitrogen, as well as for the Global Soil Partnership. She is the Deputy Chair of the Caribbean Soil Support Group, and she serves on the Executive Committee of the Partnership Initiative for Sustainable Land Management. Ms. de Souza, please go ahead with your presentation.
Excellent. 1 second, everybody. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank you all for being here for this lovely webinar. I'm here to give you an overview of nitrogen management in Trinidad and Tobago. So I'd like to start by giving you some background information. Trinidad and Tobago is a twin island. We are classified as a small island developing state with a population of approximately 1.4 to 1.5 million people. We are located very close to South America in the Caribbean, and we are predominantly known for oil and gas production. Nitrogen management raises complex management issues. In Trinidad and Tobago, we have divided this responsibility for nitrogen management. For quality issues, we've assigned it to particular ministries. The Ministry of Planning and Development, which houses our Environmental Management Authority, deals with our quality issues, as well as the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education. There are quantity issues, which are economically oriented ministries, such as the ministry that I am from, the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, and the Ministry of Energy. Now, I want you all to know that we don't have a nitrogen or a nutrient policy. We also don't have an action plan and a legislation, but we have actually completed our action plan. However, what we do have is our national environmental policy. And what this policy aims is to improve the local economy by sustainably managing our natural assets while protecting the environment and human health through pollution control, addressing climate change in order to foster an environmentally responsible society which yields and evolves a greener economy. And this is supported by our Vision 2030. So we have a national development strategy that also has our environmental priority areas, our areas for economic growth, as well as social development. What is one thing that I would have noticed from our nitrogen assessment and the development of the National Action Plan is we actually have limited nitrogen monitoring and management systems. I briefly spoke about our Environmental Management Authority. They are responsible for managing what other stakeholders across the country do. So we have some monitoring being done by the Institute of Marine Affairs, as well as for the industry in terms of the Ministry of Energy. There's insufficient coordination among the stakeholders. What this basically means is that there's always a gap. There are a lot of activities that are actually occurring, but in terms of making a holistic and a sound action plan, we require that coordination among the stakeholders. I'm moving on to this other point, nitrogen pollution in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, there are various sources of nitrogen as well as nutrient pollution, but I'm focusing on nitrogen for this particular webinar. And one of our main pollution contributors would be through agriculture runoff. The misuse of fertilizers, particularly nitrogen-based fertilizers, and runoff from livestock operations has contributed significantly to nitrogen as well as nutrient pollution. It has also impacted.
Sorry, Gabriela, your presentation does not move. Can you please?
It's not moving.
Yeah.
Can you see it now?
Yeah, we can see, but only the first page.
Okay, I'll stop and I'll share again. I apologize. Can you see it now? Can you see the slide?
I can't. Vanjiro, can you see?
No, we cannot see.
No.
Okay, I'll try again. Can you see it now?
Yes, but yeah, okay. Can you, yeah, in the...
I'll try another slide. Can you see this slide?
Yes.
Excellent. So apologies, I'll restart this particular slide. So for nitrogen pollution, there are major contributors in Trinidad and Tobago. We have agriculture runoff, which is basically the misuse of fertilizers, especially nitrogen-based fertilizers, and runoff from livestock operations, which contributes significantly to nitrogen pollution. There's atmospheric deposition. Nitrogen from fossil fuel combustion and other sources would have been deposited in the atmosphere and eventually reaching the marine environment. Untreated wastewater and sewage. This would be our wastewater discharge. Untreated sewage, grey water, and industrial effluents from these various sources, including wastewater treatment plants, have known to be releasing excessive nutrients into our waterways. And last but not least, our industrial discharge. This goes hand in hand with our agriculture runoff, as these are our major contributors to nitrogen pollution. So the discharge from these industries involve various chemical processes that can introduce pollutants into the environment. Well, as Ning would have just spoken, I'm just here to emphasize our UNEP resolutions. And this is just to show that we were supposed to work to encourage our member states to accelerate actions to significantly reduce nitrogen waste globally by 2030. Trinidad and Tobago has signed on to multiple international agreements, the Cartagena Convention and LBS Protocol. And this protocol is basically that deals with land-based sources of pollution, specifically nitrogen and phosphorus. The Global Soil Partnership, to which I am the focal point for, works hand in hand with the United Nations Convention to combat desertification for sustainable soil and land management. There's the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. And what this does, this particularly deals with greenhouse gas emissions. So all of these agreements contain management strategies and targets and goals that member states have to adhere to and hope to achieve by particular years, specifically 2030 and 2050. Developing the National Action Plan. Now, in developing this National Action Plan in Trinidad and Tobago, it's a multi-step process. It starts with an assessment, planning, and engagement, followed by the implementation and its evaluation. So for the assessment and planning, what we would have done, we would have conducted a situation analysis. Now, a thorough assessment would have been done on our current situation. You would hear this later on by Dr. Gaius Eudoxie in terms of the nitrogen assessment, and I would have completed a baseline screening in terms of what is actually being done, what we actually lack, and where the gaps and challenges lie. For policy alignment, this is very, very crucial. Ensuring an action plan aligns with existing national policies, laws, and international framework is the basis for our development of our national action plan. Last year, we held 2 stakeholder engagement meetings. I held an informal one in April 2024. And what we would have derived from this particular stakeholder engagement is that there are ministries as well as different government agencies and private sector that would be collecting specific data. However, there is a lack of communication throughout the value chain. So we would have had a stakeholder meeting in November, and that meeting, we would have identified relevant stakeholders that would gather input in order to build consensus. Now, what I would have noticed specifically as the focal point is that we have not identified certain targets. And because of the fact that we haven't identified targets, it's because we lack monitoring as well as diagnostic services. I want you to remember this. If you cannot measure it, you cannot manage it, or you cannot monitor it. And any particular national action plan that is sound, scientifically sound, must have that framework of analytical and diagnostic services supported by the monitoring framework and the legal framework as well. So after this, during these stakeholder engagements, we would have set particular goals. Now, these goals have to be clear, measurable, achievable, and relevant to Trinidad and Tobago. So what we notice that what one situation may be for the Caribbean, it may not be so for a temperate country. We are tropical with 2 seasons, the rainy and the sunny seasons. So, and also in terms of nitrogen pollution, it may be different by country. And the last but not least point, action planning. The actions entails specific strategies, interventions, and activities that we hope to meet by a particular time frame. I thank you all for being a part of the overview, and I look forward to your questions, and I hope that you stay so that you could be enlightened on the further steps and the lessons learned in terms of the development of Trinidad and Tobago's National Action Plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabrielle, for providing us with a step-by-step overview of the process. This is, I'm sure, incredibly helpful for other countries who might be embarking on this journey. Now I would like to invite Dr. Abbas Basir to present an introduction to the Trinidad and Tobago National Action Plan for Sustainable Nitrogen Management. Dr. Basir worked as a consultant for the UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology to develop the South Asian Roadmap for Sustainable Nitrogen Management. He's a member of the advisory board of the South Asian Nitrogen Hub, the Minister for Higher Education of Afghanistan, Director General of the South Asian Cooperative Environment Program, SACEP, as well as Senior Advisor to the Afghan President on Natural Resources and Environment, and Deputy Director General, National Environmental Protection Agency of Afghanistan. Dr. Basir, please go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Am I audible? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I would like to thank all of you for being here for today's webinar. I would like to have an introduction to Trinidad and Tobago National Action Plan for Sustainable Nitrogen Management. So this is in fact in a draft stage, and I would like to highlight the most important part of this action plan. Next slide. Yeah, this National Action Plan has 7 chapters. It is composed of 7 chapters. The first chapter is an introductory chapter in which these 3 following issues addressed: overview of nitrogen issues globally and nationally. I think it was covered by Gabriel. I don't want to address this issue. Rationale for developing an app in this National Action Plan. There are different rationales identified, including environmental pressure, fragmented policies, economic and social benefits arising from sustainable nitrogen management. Third issue is scope and purpose. The scope is very wide, and that we are trying to cover all sectors, including agriculture, energy, transport, industry, wastewater, solid waste, and consumption. In fact, these are all the sources of nitrogen emission and nitrogen pollution, and we are going to address all of these sectors by this National Action Plan. The main purpose is to enhance the coordinated efforts in nitrogen management in Trinidad and Tobago. Next slide. National context. I think Gabriela had introduced the national context, and Dr. Exodus also will be highlighting these issues. Just I highlight the overall overview which is made in this National Action Plan. Overview of the Trinidad and Tobago geography, climate, demography, socio-economic conditions. All of these aspects are addressed here. And current status of nitrogen use and management in Trinidad and Tobago, including nitrogen sources and emissions, nitrogen impacts on the environment, water, air, biodiversity, and the soil, economic and social effects of the nitrogen pollution, as well as legal and policy framework, which kind of legal instruments and policy instruments are available in the country. all of these aspects are addressed in this chapter. Next slide. Yeah, key challenges and opportunities. This is the third chapter, which is addressing key challenges and opportunities. There are different challenges in Trinidad. The first challenge is the lack of data, which make it difficult to have a policy, an applicable policy in Trinidad and Tobago. The other problem is policy fragmentation. There are different policies, but they are not connected to each other. Poor institutional coordination and low capacities. Because the policy is fragmented, there is no coordination between the policy sectors. And there is also a lack of public awareness and engagement. There is less engagement from different sectors in nitrogen management. But still, there are some opportunities in nitrogen management in Trinidad. Recycling nitrogen waste. This is an opportunity for nitrogen management, and there are good practices in the other neighboring countries which can help in nitrogen management for Trinidad and Tobago, and also there are different technologies available in the region and outside the region that Tobago and Trinidad can upscale those technologies and best experiences. Next slide. Yeah, this is in fact the main part of the action plan, which is the fourth chapter of this national action plan, starting with vision. What is the vision? The vision is to foster a sustainable nitrogen future for Trinidad and Tobago, characterized by a healthy environment, resilient communities to climate change, and equitable delivery of the benefits associated with nitrogen through economically viable and environmentally responsible practices that ensures the well-being of communities and ecosystems in the Trinidad and Tobago. Next slide, please. Objectives. We have identified 5 objectives. In fact, these objectives are based on Kunming biodiversity protocol, which is very important. The first objective is to reduce the adverse effects of nitrogen pollution to the level that are not harmful to the environment and human health. The second objective is to enhance the efficiency of nitrogen use in Trinidad and Tobago. The third objective is to promote innovations in sustainable nitrogen management. There are different innovations, and we can promote those innovations. The fourth objective is to secure adequate means of implementation, including capacity building, financial resources, access to and transfer of technology, technical and scientific cooperation and coordination, and a fund to promote national coordination in this area, involving all stakeholders, including scientific communities and farmers. Next slide, please. There are eight guiding principle, which in fact guide the developing and implementation of this national action plan. Human right-based targets and actions, which is very important, I think, in developing and also implementation of this national action plan. Gender equity, also this is a global challenge and also a global demand. Science-based approach, which is very important, and any actions, any policy should be evidence-based and science-based. Sustainability is very important. Uh, Indigenous knowledge and local wisdom, integrated approach. Considering the fragmentation, there is a need for integrated action, partnership and coordination, track progress through the monitoring system. So these are the main principles, which is in fact guiding principles for the implementation of, for the development and implementation of the National Action Plan. Next slide, please. Targets. Considering this vision and objectives, there are some specific targets. We have identified 14 targets. Some targets are shared targets which cross all the sectors, including one, reduce nitrogen pollution from all sources. So this is very important that by 2040 we should reduce it to the level that are not harmful to biodiversity and ecosystem functions and service. Target to incentivize sustainable nitrogen management by 2030. We should identify and reform incentives, including nitrogen-related incentives harmful for environment. Third target, improved public awareness. There is a need to improve education awareness, rising and human and institutional capacity on sustainable nitrogen management. Next slide, please. Then we have sector-based targets. Starting from agriculture, there are four targets identified here. The first target is reduced nitrogen pollution from agriculture sector by 2027. Potential environmental risk associated with the wasteful or excessive use of nitrogen fertilizer will be identified, and by 2030, coherent policies and good practices to reduce nitrogen pollution will be adopted. Increase nitrogen use efficiency by 2030, improve nitrogen use efficiency and crop production by at least 20%, enhance smart livestock and increase areas under sustainable cropping. There are some specific areas by some, for example, by 2030, increase the area under sustainable cropping systems, such as integrated crop livestock systems, conservation agriculture, and agroforestry to enhance soil's health, increase productivity, and reduce environmental impact of nitrogen use. Next slide, please. Sector-based targets, again in transport, energy, industry, and wastewater. five targets are identified under these sectors: reduce nitrogen oxide emissions from transport and industry sector by 2040. Sustainably reduce NOx emissions from transport and industry sector by 15% through enforcement and monitoring of the current and new vehicles emission standards. Increase the share of clean energy by 2040. At least we should have 30% share of clean fuel. Establish standards for nutrients. Though there are some standards in Trinidad and Tobago, but still we need to update those standards. Improve wastewater management and reduce nitrogen pollution from coastal and marine sources and activities, because they are all sources of the nitrogen pollution, and there are specific targets under this theme. Next slide. Under consumption, we have a target 13, dietary change and reduction of food waste, and under municipal solid waste and recycling, we have one target: increase nutrient recovery. Both of them, dietary change and reduction of food waste, as well as increasing nutrient recovery, are very important in nitrogen management, because both are the source of nitrogen emission. According to the target 13, by 2030, Trinidad and Tobago will be achieving substantial reduction of food losses and food waste to reduce nitrogen emission. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah. Now, key actions which are helping us to achieve those objectives and those targets. Under each, there are some shared actions across all sectors, and there are specific actions under each individual sector. We have identified 7 actions, 7 key actions under this across all sectors, including innovative policies and regulations. This is very important, that we need to have a new policy and regulations, particularly an integrated policies. There is a need for integrated policies which cover all sectors and bring all sectors together. The second action is interministerial coordination mechanism. We need to bring all sectors together, and there is a need to establish a mechanism for coordination between these organs. Measurement and data collection, as already mentioned, Trinidad and Tobago lack the required data, and there is a need to enhance the capacity to measure and collect data. National nitrogen budgets is also very important for monitoring. Public awareness and education programs, capacity building programs, science and policy partnerships. These are all actions which across all sectors, and which will be helping all sectors to manage their nitrogen emissions sustainably. Next slide, please. Under agricultural sector, there are specific actions identified under this identified in the National Action Plan. Of course, the first is reform and enforce fertilizer regulations. There are some regulations, but we need to reform them and enforce them. Innovative technologies and practices, including neem-coated urea, deep placement of urea, biofertilizer, leaf color charts, and other technologies and practices. Uh, uh, the third action is limiting or avoiding fertilizer application in high-risk areas, livestock housing, on manure management. We need to improve the livestock management, and in the livestock management, livestock housing and manure management is very important. And improve livestock feed management. Because it causes many waste if there is deficient practices in feed management. Reduce burning of manure and crop residues. So this is a usual practice in many countries, and there is a need to reduce burning of the manures and crop residues. Next slide. Under transport, industry, energy, wastewater, and marine and coastal water, we have 7 actions which will be helping us in sustainable nitrogen management. Of course, sustainable transportation system will be helpful. Emission standards is also important when there is a need to have specific emission standards. Enhance nutrient recovery. As it was mentioned, there are opportunities for nutrient recovery, and we need to enhance nutrient recovery from different resources. Nutrient recovery technologies, it is available in some countries, and we can upscale and adopt those technologies in Trinidad and Tobago. Promote renewable energy. This is one way. Improve wastewater management strategies and practices, and improve marine and coastal water quality standards and pollution reduction strategies. These are all in these sectors, and are in fact helpful in sustainable nitrogen management. Next slide, please. Resources and the resources, waste and recycling and consumption. We have identified these actions: reduce burning of forestry and crop biomass, implement recovery of organic residues, waste to drive the circular economy. It is also mentioned that there is a need to implement some pilot projects for the nitrogen recovery. There is a need also for an assessment to the value of the nitrogen loss from food production and consumption, because it will be helping us how to manage food waste. An integrated food policy to promote dietary change. This is also helpful, and minimize food waste. These are all actions and policies that can help in sustainable nitrogen management. Next slide, please. Implementation framework. Until this chapter, we have identified targets and actions that can help in achieving targets and objectives and our vision, but there is a need for implementation. In this chapter, some implementation mechanism and instrument are identified. The first is institutional mechanism, which is composed of 2 initiatives. The first initiative is to establish an interministerial committee which help in coordination. And the second institution mechanism is a specialized working group, which is working under the committee. Both of these mechanisms will bring all stakeholders together and also experts. Of course, legal framework is very important for the implementation of this national action plan. In some areas, we need to have a specific legal framework. Political will and commitment is very important. It is already there, but we need more commitment for the nitrogen, for the sustainable nitrogen management. Capacity building is also important for the implementation, partnerships, and stakeholder engagement. Stakeholder engagement and partnerships, particular partnerships between government and scientific community, partnership between government and private sector are essential for the implementation of the National Action Plan. Next slide, please. Monitoring framework. Under this chapter, we have identified three very important issues. First is the monitoring framework, performance indicators, and metrics. We have identified performance indicators and metrics, which is very helpful in monitoring the implementation of the National Action Plan. It was also identified diverse methods of data collection, a centralized data management system identified, reporting mechanism, which include annual progress reports and stakeholder engagement. And the reporting mechanism, we need to engage stakeholders, also get feedback from the stakeholders and involve them in the report. And the verification is the last part of the monitoring and reporting, which is also very important. That is third-party audits and feedback from stakeholders. All of these three, monitoring, reporting, and verification, are very important for the implementation of the National Action Plan. Next slide, please. I would like to add that we have also developed an action plan for the implementation of this National Action Plan. In this action plan, we have identified very detailed actions which is helpful in the implementation of the National Action Plan, and every ministry has specific mandate for the implementation of this action plan. Options for financial support. This is the last chapter and my last slide. National funds is one of the sources, and there is a need for the government to identify and specify specific funds for sustainable nitrogen management. Economic instrument, of course, including taxes, for example, bonds. Private sector investment, engaging private sector is very important. Public and private partnership, market-based solutions, international development bank investment. There are some international development banks that are interested to invest in sustainable nitrogen management, and external funds, including from the green fund, including green fund and GF and other external funds that are available at the international level. Next slide. Yeah, thank you for being patient and listening to my presentation. Of course, it was a little bit long, and I tried to cover all the chapters that are including in the National Action Plan. And because it was a little bit long, I tried to move a little bit fast. I hope it was helpful. So if there is any question, I'm waiting for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Basir, for highlighting some of the most important elements of the National Action Plan for Sustainable Nitrogen Management of Trinidad and Tobago. Now I would like to invite our final speaker, Dr. Gaius Eudoxie, to present key elements and lessons learned in the development of the National Action Plan. So Dr. Eudoxie is a senior lecturer of soil science at the University of West Indies, with responsibility for teaching and research on sustainable soil management and crop nutrition. Additionally, he serves as Deputy Dean, Teaching, Learning and Student Development at the Faculty of Food and Agriculture. He has over 20 years' experience teaching, conducting research and development in soil management, with a significant part of which focuses on dedicated to soil quality management. Please go ahead with your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Chair. Good day to everyone. Let me extend my compliments to the United Nations Environmental Program, as well as to our local focal ministry, the Ministry of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries. It is indeed a pleasure being here with you all. And let me extend greetings from Trinidad and Tobago. I do want to also extend compliments to our other two presenters who would have given a very good context and background, and that should help me a lot in terms of where I would go with my presentation here, sharing particularly some of the challenges, some of the bottlenecks, some of the hurdles that we have to plan for in ensuring that we accomplish the task of developing National Action Plan for Sustainable Nitrogen Management. So I think I want to also start, by, and I hope that you all can see the presentation and that the presentation is in presentation mode. I do want to start by saying that, we ought to put a disclaimer that what we're sharing is as well from a small island developing state. We are island state, a very small island, Trinidad and Tobago. And we have to recognize that the peculiarities of a small island makes it a little different from probably some of the other countries that are represented here in the seminar today. So you could only imagine that some of the challenges that we may have faced, particularly as it may be associated with probably administrative bureaucracy and bottlenecks. It really depends on how well, institutional coordination and systems are within your own territory. But we have to bear that in mind, particularly noting again that a lot of the countries that are probably now being supported are as well categorized as developing countries. So pay attention to that in terms of some of the things that I'm going to share with you all as I head through this particular presentation. So I'm going to talk about one of the components of developing the NAP that Gabrielle would have mentioned, which is really and truly trying to understand the assessment and balance. The nitrogen assessment and balance within your country and what it entails to do that, because that is an area that we had significant challenges with. I'm going to speak a little bit about the impact of nitrogen and understanding, obviously, from a source perspective, what are the sinks and how are those sinks, environmental or human, influenced. I want to go a little more deeper into some of the legal instruments that we have that help us govern nitrogen management in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm going to speak to one of the huge areas, I think, and Dr. Basir brought that up, that was very complex for us, which is data collection and validation. And then I'm going to share 1 or 2 slides on just some of the things that we learned and some of the things that we would hope that when you all go forward, you all could utilize that to ease, obviously, the efforts in generating your national action plan. So in Trinidad and Tobago, strangely enough, compared to the rest of our Caribbean territories, and I'm speaking about our English-speaking Caribbean territories that are part of what we call the Caribbean Community, or CARICOM, Trinidad and Tobago and now Guyana are probably only 2 countries within that realm that has a larger industrial sector than they do agricultural sectors. So while Trinidad and Tobago produces a significant amount of reactive nitrogen, the vast majority, 100% actually, of that reactive nitrogen is exported to other countries, including Europe, including the EU as well. And then we import back into the country a significant amount of fertilizer-based nitrogen that is used in agriculture. In addition to that, we also do have sources of nitrogen associated, obviously, with waste and waste management, and that is an issue as well for us, and changes in land use. So if you pay attention to our graphic, the graphic on the right-hand side of the screen, it says an interesting story that over the years, while our fertilizer, generally, if you look at the trend, our fertilizer use has increased, over the years, and particularly for nitrogen. We're also seeing a decrease in the actual production index, or our productivity per unit area is decreasing. And what that is clearly indicating to us is inefficiency in the use of our nutrients, and in particular in nitrogen. So one of the things we wanted to understand is is there an opportunity for us to try to quantify it? So we did spend a lot of time trying to assess that nitrogen balance, particularly in quantitative terms. And I have to extend compliments to the nitrogen working group and some of the key personnel on that team that was able to provide some guidance in how we could go about doing that. Because one of the things that challenged us a lot is the lack of data. So even highlighted there, you realize that we're reporting here in 2025, but what the data we had available to help us get an understanding was from 2004. So clearly, we are strained in terms of our monitoring procedures, and I'll talk a little bit about that later on, but clearly we do not have, or we did not have, sufficient data to provide a very updated assessment. But nonetheless, what we did have was sufficient information from our agricultural census that was done in 2004 to help guide us as to where we wanted to go. So we were able to use some of that based on models that were established, in peer-reviewed journal articles to help us give an idea about the difference between nitrogen input into agriculture and nitrogen output. And from that, we realized that we were wasting about 45% of our nitrogen, meaning that a significant amount of nitrogen brought into the system certainly is left to an environmental fate. And that is an area that we knew we wanted to address, particularly noting, obviously, and supporting the fact that we had lower productivity based with increased fertilizer use. We further went on and we also looked at what is that nitrogen balance with regards to outputs from both animal and human. So we did look at, again, utilizing models well established in the literature, the amount of nitrogen waste that we were having from those various sectors. And we saw that the amount of waste was extremely high coming from those sectors. And it is something that we needed to pay attention to, it, understanding the fact that that balance we have in Trinidad and Tobago is lopsided, particularly with regards to the fact that a significant amount of what's coming in is now as well going out and not necessarily being cycled, nor being utilized efficiently within the system. So we knew that that was having some impacts. Were we able to monitor those impacts? Were we able to quantify the level of those impacts? For some, we have absolutely, at least from our engagement with stakeholders, our reviews of what was available in the literature, we were not able to determine if there was impact on human health because there was no information readily available to help us do that. So again, that is one of the areas that was a bottleneck for us, and we have to recognize that we may not have in some of our countries significant amount of accessible information surrounding, impacts, particularly nitrogen on human health. And I have to admit that we do monitor, for instance, we monitor air quality in a number of our large cities, and we do monitor gaseous nitrogen forms, and we also monitor particulate matter. So we know that we do have these as environmental impact monitoring systems, but not necessarily translating that to a risk per se or actual impact on human health. So we have done some work, and we are, as I said, monitoring air quality standards. We know and we have seen data to show that in most of our coastal watersheds, you do have high ammonium levels, and some do have high nitrate levels, and we have been able to use tracer technology to link that back to particularly nitrogen use in agricultural settings. So we know that there is that connectivity there. We know, again, from our traditional history of plantation agriculture, that inputs of nitrogen has resulted in changes in soil quality and obviously influences biodiversity as well as obviously climate change. So we know that, and we do have some evidence to tell us that there have been, through our mismanagement of nitrogen, impacts on our environment. I wanted to take that into context, particularly noting that Gabby did indicate that there was a policy deficiency for us. And the policy deficiency is not one where we do not have significant amount of policies addressing environmental issues in Trinidad and Tobago. And as you can see, we have a ton load of good policies that really speak to environmental management. There is not an agricultural policy, and hence there is not a guide as to, for instance, fertilizer use. While, as Gabby mentioned, Trinidad and Tobago is part of the Global Soil Partnership, and we do adhere to and try to implement the fertilizer code, as a guidance document. There is no policy direction surrounding fertilizer use within the country. And when you dig into, for instance, our policies, they speak nothing of nutrient management. So that is a huge deficiency that we have locally that stood out as something that we need to address. None of the policies address nutrient management, nor understanding the importance of nutrients as a source of pollution and what we need to do to address it. While they did speak to domain-based pollutants or pollution like water and air, they did not necessarily speak to the pollutants and the importance of specific pollutants in terms of their contribution to environmental degradation. So that's an area that we really have to think about because essentially there is no guide that speaks to our various public agencies as to how they should implement and how they should manage nutrients within Trinidad and Tobago. So what did we see as we went about conducting this particular national action plan? So one of the things we recognized very early on was that data collection and validation was a huge challenge. And I want to raise that issue to the attendees here for them to understand what that meant. For a small country like Trinidad and Tobago, we only have about 1.5 million people here, and it was complicated to collect data. Complicated in that is not that sometimes the data is not there, but the data is not accessible. We spent months having one-on-one conversations with various stakeholders, trying to understand how to access the data, yet to get a significant amount of back and forth, but with the end point of us not being able to get the data. So there's one thing about data being available, And there's a difference within data being accessible within, obviously, the remit of what you want to conduct. So that is a huge issue there. And I could only imagine for larger countries with more complex institutional arrangements, that may be challenging. Part of that had to do with the fact that even for our small country, Nigerian management crossed multiple ministries and multiple stakeholders. So we had private stakeholders, for instance, a lot of our energy sector companies, they collect air emission data. But again, it's very challenging to get some of that data. And even when they report the data to our various ministries, sometimes the data is collated in a manner that is not readily available to the public. So that's some of the issues that we have to appreciate. And as nitrogen is so diverse, multiple stakeholders are involved. So existing national mandate does not exist, so we don't have anything that speaks to nitrogen or nutrient management, and hence coordination is an issue. So I have to give, again, applause to UNEP, to the Nitrogen Management Working Group, and to our local focal agency, because they have started that process of trying to coordinate, and put together a mechanism which can allow for sharing of information and data. Additionally, the relevance of the data is also critical. As I was showing you, we use national agriculture. Last time we had a census, agricultural census, was in 2004, right? 20 years ago. When you think about what is happening now, it certainly may not necessarily be as reflective as we would like it to be. So that means there is a need for us through these mechanisms to ensure that we have the requisite monitoring in place. And even when we think about what we have, most of what we have locally is project driven, meaning that similarly, so as Dr. Basiri was saying, we have a lot of projects from international funding agencies that address issues pertaining to nutrient management. But these projects are not embedded heavily in programmatic areas in ministries, and hence it doesn't become a routine part of what departments within the ministries have to do, and hence a lot of that information remains in nice reports, that remain generally not well utilized. So what were some of those key lessons that we learned in terms of going through this process? We know that while it is diverse, the stakeholders, they are limited in number in terms of who directly manage reactive nitrogen. It is not an environmental or agricultural, so there's not an environmental or agricultural policy that guides nutrient management, within the country. So that is something that, in my mind and from my interpretation, implies that it becomes more challenging because it is not embedded in any specific ministry's mandate or public sector mandate to address it. And I think that is a huge issue there. And that might not be the case for many other countries, but it is the case for Trinidad and Tobago. Because when we prioritize environmental challenges, nutrient management is not at the top. It's not there as a key challenge, and hence you don't necessarily see it as routine work for agencies or stakeholders who are engaged in that regard. There is a significant data access barrier, and that is something that I think requires. They have had some attempts at improving it, because it is not only something that affects nitrogen management or nutrient management, it's environmental data, it's agricultural data, and they have tried to implement some information systems for environmental type data. And I believe that that needs to be continued. And certainly, I put that last one in that says time matters, because if you're on a short time frame to get these things done, you're also working with agencies and stakeholders that have their own mandates, their own responsibilities, and their own objectives. And at times, response and being able to deal with them does take a significant amount of time. So coming down to the end, what was important in us being able to get to where we were in accomplishing the task that we have in front of us? You do need to do a thorough literature review. That is important in doing the nitrogen assessment. And you do need to be guided by either the amount of data that you have available or to understand some of the existing models that will help you be able to put together with limited data a reasonable balance for nitrogen in terms of inputs and outputs. You want to certainly identify and communicate directly with key focal points. That was very important in our process. Gabrielle, who is the national focal point, was able to communicate with a number of other sister public agencies, as well as some of our other stakeholders from very early. And that was an advantage in us being able to move forward with this national steering committee and being able to move the process forward with a very core group of stakeholders. You may also need to, and we did that in our, we also need to probably devise ways of how you want to collect data if data is not readily available to you. So we did use survey instruments that we sent out to key stakeholders, yeah, and we also did interviews, one-on-one interviews with these key stakeholders for verification of information, and as well to give them an opportunity to give expert opinion surrounding their area with regards to nitrogen management. And lastly, we did provide an opportunity to get feedback and to stimulate discussion. So we had a number of stakeholder engagements that sought to allow the wider nitrogen stakeholder community to provide feedback on what we assessed and what we proposed, particularly our targets and actions, and to provide input and discussion surrounding that. And with that, I want to thank you. I'm very much open to any questions that you all may have. It was a wonderful opportunity to learn as well as to engage in what is essentially a very important process. So once again, thank you so very much for giving me the opportunity to share. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you so much for your presentation. And as you mentioned, any participant that wants to put a question, please put it on the chat. We have concluded with the presentations, and now it is my pleasure to invite Mr. Mihai Contastinescu, Director of the Management Unit for the Integrated Nutrient Pollution Control from the Ministry of Environment, Waters and Forests of Romania. He's also the co-chair of the UNEP Working Group on Nitrogen, and he will now chair the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, for passing the floor. Firstly, I would like to start by thanking to all those who contributed for this to happen, for the preparation of the National Action Plan. So I will start by thanking Tuning, because he was not only presenting the scene for this webinar, but we have to appreciate that he was at the basis of the efforts for the National Action Plan preparation, and he made all the logistical and technical preparation for this to happen. Congratulations to you, Dr. Basir and Dr. Eudoxie, for your tremendous work that you have done in the preparation of the National Action Plan. I had the chance to meet you and to discuss while you were working for the National Action Plan preparation. And I have to say that I could feel that you are very dedicated, and now your professionalism is well reflected in the quality of the document. My high appreciations are going also to Gabrielle. She proved to be the exemplary role model focal point. This is what we are looking for in the Nitrogen Working Group. We are looking towards having active focal points that should be able to mobilize the national resources, and this is what Gabrielle done. She mobilized all the national relevant stakeholders and coordinate and contribute directly to the National Action Plan preparation. And I have to say that the presenters provide quite a lot of information and you are probably curious to know more details about their experience. I'm now giving the floor to all the participants. You may raise your hand, you may put the questions in the chat. And for sure, they have quite a lot to say, things that they haven't had the chance to put in their presentations. The floor for questions is now open. While waiting for the questions, I have a small curiosity and a question for Gabriel. As a focal point, what do you think are the next steps in adopting the National Action Plan?
Hi again, everybody. And before I answer that question, forgive me for not thanking UNEP. Yes, and of course, my co-chair, Mihai, as well as Purvaja, for the opportunity to be able to develop this National Action Plan. So as I would have identified previously, there were particular steps that one has to take in terms of the development of a National Action Plan. So following those steps, we must do some level of resource allocation, right? And this was, Dr. Basir would have spoken about it. We must allocate particular funds for this particular initiative. We must ensure that there's collaboration and coordination. Dr. Eudoxie, he emphasized on the importance of this. The data is there, but it may not be accessible. And this is where the bottleneck always remains. We have to ensure that throughout the value chain, we must be able to, how to say it, solve or resolve our problems. Yes, deal with the challenges and present particular opportunities and solutions. Remember that first picture, right? With every problem, there's an opportunity. And after that, we would have had, after the budgets, we would have then decided in terms of our policy, we would have had our goals, we would have set our goals. And following that, we monitor and evaluate the targets. So in regularly monitoring progress towards the goal, we then evaluate the effectiveness of the action plan. And of course, there's flexibility and adaptation. As Dr. Eudoxie just said, you know, time matters. We must be prepared to adapt our action plan as needed, or your action plan as needed, based on changing circumstances and emerging challenges. Yes, may I?
Thank you, Gabriel, for your answer. We can see your energy, and this was actually leading the entire process. Any question from the audience? I know that we have both focal points in our audience, and also we have scientists. It doesn't matter the perspective.
Mihai, I think
Mihai,
Mark to say something.
Yeah, Mark.
Do you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Mark requests the floor, please.
Oh, okay. Okay. Please, Mark.
Mark, you have to
Banjiro,
unmute yourself.
can you please unmute Mark?
I think I should be unmuted now.
Okay, good.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much. And so first of all, congratulations for what looks a really excellent piece of work. And it's really wonderful to see it coming together. And it was also good to see as well from Dr. Eudoxie, those initial reflections from the experience. So I have two questions. The first question is how far have you got in the overall process? What stage have you got to, and what's your initial reaction from government when you talk to other government colleagues? And let's say put that on a path to the future. Where do you hope to be in a year or two's time? That's the first question. And the second question is, you mentioned, Dr. Eudoxie, about the very high level of fertilizer manufacture. I think I've just looked online and found out that 5 million tons of nitrogen fertilizer is made on Trinidad and Tobago every year, as you pointed out, exported. But does that provide special risks for your country in nitrogen management, which are maybe different for other countries, those risks of managing the industrial side?
Okay, I'll take the first one and Chaos, you'll take the second one. So, Mark, based on my experience, it has been challenging to get proper coordination. However, I believe, and this was actually from our second stakeholder meeting, the formal one that we would have had in November, where many stakeholders would have stated why specifically nitrogen? Why not on a holistic way, nutrient management? And this is where the exercise lay, because most of the fact that it's reactive nitrogen, you cannot actually see the deleterious effect of it. So they wanted to know, is there an initiative? And the biggest thing that I would say would lie is the fact of the lack of awareness, that lack of awareness, the lack of education. Because the ministries, we all have our mandates, the Ministry of Agriculture, our mandates specifically in terms of, for me, soil and land capability unit. We must provide certain levels of diagnostic services, especially for the farming community. But then what do we do with that information? How does it benefit not just the farming community, but the population on the whole? And I think what stakeholders would have realized who are actively working, for example, the Environmental Management Agency, the Ministry of Energy, public and private sector, is that even though they are currently collecting certain types of information, how they can collect it to now actually be used in a particular format in terms of addressing certain actions or targets. Yeah, for example, what we would have seen for the Environmental Management Authority, based on our water and air pollution rules, they are now stating that, well, not now, but there have been talks that they are revising those policies to reflect certain gaps that they have identified and now goes hand in hand with this nitrogen action plan. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Sutton, thanks so very much for your question, and thank you for your contribution to nutrient management globally. It's indeed a pleasure having you at this particular webinar, noting that I have gone through many of your publications in support of what we're doing here in Trinidad. So very appreciative of your work at the global level. So yes, it is a concern, but one that they have, to a large extent, managed appropriately. So there is some data that shows, for instance, within our industrial estate, the coastal waters within that industrial estate does have higher than the normal nitrogen, reactive nitrogen, particularly ammonia and nitrate. So we know that there is, from those industries, some level of contamination. They are aware of it. We do have, through our Environmental Management Authority, monitoring processes for those companies. And as such, they are, to a large extent, managing it. But that risk remains because within these waters, the levels are elevated. And we have had that data, I think, from roughly about 2020 going forward. We also know that the air quality in and around the actual industrial sites for particulate matter, as well for some of the oxides of nitrogen, are higher and above, obviously, screening levels, particularly health-based screening levels. So they do have a consistent monitoring operation there, air quality monitoring operation there at those sites. And they are essentially working with those industries, those both that produce the ammonia as well as the nitrogenous-based products and as well as other downstream industries to address that issue. I know recently in speaking to when we had some of the stakeholder engagement in speaking to one of the representatives from a nitrogen producing company, ammonia producing company, they were indicating that there was significant efforts towards reducing nitrogen-based emissions by understanding, obviously, the stack emissions and the technologies associated with various absorptive capacities and mechanisms within the exhaust stacks. So I know that that is a concern there, and I know that they are working on that. But clearly, it does pose a risk, noting the large amount that we produce in this particular small country. So thanks so very much again.
May I add something here in response to what raised by Dr. Mark?
Yes, please, Dr. Basir.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Mark, for being here and also for raising this very important question. You asked about the steps for the developing of this national action plan. Actually, the different steps were taken to develop this national action plan. The first step was a stakeholder workshop in Trinidad and Tobago. In this workshop, of course, before this, a national assessment report was developed. Dr. Exodis had an assessment of this situation in Trinidad and Tobago. And then this report was shared with all stakeholders. After that, we had a national stakeholders meeting. In this national stakeholders meeting, this report was validated, and we discussed different aspects of this report and challenges that there are and opportunities that are available and experiences that exist and the way forward. All of these issues were discussed based on the national assessment report. And then in this workshop, also the outline of the national action plan was presented. So there were some comments from the audience, from the stakeholders about the outline of this national action plan. Then after these meetings, based on the feedback from the stakeholders, Dr. Guys, our national expert, national consultant, developed and drafted this national action plan based on the outline that already accepted by the stakeholders. Then after developing this draft, again, this draft was shared with the stakeholders, and there was a national action plan for the validation of this report, this draft. So then all the comments from the stakeholders were collected, and these comments were included in the document. And now a document, I think it is final draft and is at the stage of adoption by the cabinet, by the government of the Trinidad and Tobago. I'm hopeful that during the next 3 or 4 months, government of Trinidad will be able to adopt this national action plan. I would like to mention that the development of this national action plan, in fact, is inspired by the South Asia roadmap for sustainable nitrogen management. in which you are also a leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Basir, and thank you, Dr. Eudoxie. I hope the answer are on the expectations of Professor Mark. I can see we have a question on the chat and also a hand raised from Kem. I noticed that the question on the chat was first. I will read it, and my proposal is for Dr. Eudoxie to answer it. But if other questions are raised, then yeah, I see Gabrielle also try to, yeah, she provided an answer. So I propose to Gabrielle to answer, and then Dr. Eudoxie to complement the answer if as needed. Please, Gabrielle.
Yes. What I wanted, the question basically for those who may be driving or whatnot is, how does the National Action Plan address environmental sustainability and agricultural productivity? And basically what this action plan is, it's actually not just to address it, but it actually tries to promote sustainable farming practices, sustainable soil and land management practices, right? So through environmental sustainability, what we're going to try to do is do resource efficiency by trying to minimize or reduce the overuse of fertilizers, adopt certain technologies to reduce greenhouse gases emission, reducing pollution, right? Finding ways in the industry, especially because of the fact that a lot of our industrial effluence adds to that atmospheric deposition, right? And through agriculture productivity, once we are able to manage all the pollutants, whether it's on soil, land, air, and water, we can then improve the certain aspects of agriculture productivity. So we're not just really talking in terms of land for yield, but we're talking in terms of improving soil and land, reducing degradation, encouraging reforestation, reducing deforestation, investing in technological, hearing a lot of feedback, yes, investing in technological advances and infrastructure. So this would be using climate smart technology as well as precision agriculture, promoting sustainable production systems. So that's why it's an interministerial approach. It's not the focus is not solely on agriculture or the Ministry of Energy, but it's something that has to be done as a country, as a population. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Dr. Eudoxie, would you like something to add?
I think all I would add from what Gabrielle would have mentioned was that for us in Trinidad, there was 3 key areas that really create the imbalance in our nitrogen. One, obviously, is our agricultural use and inefficiency in use of nitrogen inputs. 2 is certainly our waste produced, and that waste that could be split up into obviously sewage-based type waste, and it could also be fecal waste from animals. And we also have consumption-based waste, meaning that we have a significant amount of nitrogen that goes into our landfills. So the essence really in there is that while we address the agricultural issues, we improve practices, those must obviously be sustainable, but we also have to think about resource efficiency and recycling. And as such, that has to deal with aspects of consumption, you know, and that also has to do with aspects of wastewater and sewage management. So I think if you reflect upon Dr. Basir's presentation of some of those key sectoral targets, you will realize that under the actions, our intent is really to ensure that we get that balance, you know, that is now not in balance. So currently, we know our outputs of reactive N is very high. What we want to do is make sure that those remain in balance with our inputs, and as such that we can have a sustainable system overall.
Thank you, Dr. Eudoxie. Meanwhile, there is another question for you, but I will rather go to Kem meanwhile, because the hand was raised a bit before. and then you may come back to the question. We will also have to stop on the questions because the time is running off. If there is any burning question, of course, we will take it. I'm now giving the floor to Ken, please. Yes, Ken will need a bit support to unmute.
So
Kim,
Jeffrey or Benjamin.
rights to speak, so you just have to unmute your mic and then you can talk to us.
In the interest of time, I would propose Dr. Eudoxie to answer the question from the chat meanwhile, and then we'll go back to Ken, please.
No problem at all. Thank you for the question in the chat. As actually, I think it's Asma. I was now about to reply to you back in the chat, noting our time. But yes, I do agree with you that there is a need for us to review some of the policies that we have at present, noting that some of them, noting that the policies in general are deficient in addressing all of our environmental, and as well developmental concerns. Certainly the review would determine whether or not there is a need to improve, to look at other areas. It will also determine the relevance. I saw you mention the fact that our climate change policy is over, 15 years old, so to speak, whether or not other things are important. So yes, there is a need. And I have to admit that is something that you could imagine is obviously programmatic. So they do have those policies on a time schedule where they will review and update those policies, in time, dependent on what is going on and where the topical focus is for the country in terms of its developmental agenda. But clearly we have a need to particularly probably look at our agricultural and as well as our environmental aligned policies in terms of how it addresses this critical area of nutrient management that really and truly has remained hidden more than anything else within the region. And I think that is an area that we need to address. There was a very wonderful report that was done, again from UNEP in the wider Caribbean region, that highlighted the significance of nutrient mismanagement and the potential impact on our environment and health in the Caribbean. But that has not necessarily, at national level, generated the kind of interest and direction in terms of policy engagement. And I'm hoping through the Sustainable Nitrogen Steering Committee that we can address some of those critical issues, from a policy level in Trinidad and Tobago. So hopefully this National Action Plan will set the stage and the foundation for taking such action. So thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Eudoxie. I can see that there are still some problems with that unmuting Kim, but we see the question on the chat. I would read the question: how sure are you for the successful and smooth implementation of the action plan, as nitrogen is a cross-cutting issue and the inter and intra-ministerial department coordination is a must? Is that there? Probably this question should be addressed by Gabrielle. Please, Gabrielle.
Yes. Hi, Kim. Thank you for your question. Yes. Well, that's a question of a big question mark there. How sure am I? And one thing that we would have noted at our validation workshop, it requires a political will, right? Because at the end of the day, governments and ministries have to commit and it's something that has to be put on the agenda. So I wouldn't say that I am not sure, but I am sure to a particular point because of all the emerging challenges that are currently going on. And more these nutrients in terms of their management are becoming very imperative and crucial. So as for the smooth implementation, for those of you who may not know, we are actually in an election year. So we're hoping that because of the work done previously by this government, that our new government adopts this particular action plan. We do have, I am stating it, we do have that inter and intra-ministerial coordination. What it lies, the data is there. What is the big gap? Making it accessible and trying to make work relevant to actual targets that we need to achieve. So it is there. The coordination is there. It's just to ensure that the stakeholders actually engage and commit to the particular targets and strategic interventions set across in this action plan. I hope I answered your question, Kim.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Very pertinent questions. We see the feedback also from Kim. I believe now is time to, because we are a bit late, it's good that we had these valuable discussions, but now would be the time to go back to Ning for the conclusions of the meeting. Please, Ning.
Okay, thank you very much, Mihai. As the webinar comes to a close, I would like to express our sincere thanks to Gabriela, Dr. Basia, Dr. Yodoshi, and Mihai for sharing their insights on the development of the plan, and also my colleague Lanjiru and Stephanie for their hard work in preparing this webinar. We hope that this experience will inspire other countries to join the effort to develop national action plans. And we look forward to working with you to address the challenges posed by nitrogen pollution. And I noticed that also the focal point from Sri Lanka, Sepali, and also Professor Nisanka also joined this webinar. We plan to organize a webinar on development of National Action Plan in Sri Lanka in June. And so we look forward to your participation. Okay, thank you very much for everyone for your great support, and look forward to meeting you in future webinars. Thank you. Now the webinar is closed.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for
Bye.
attending.
Yeah,
Take
thank you.
care.
Bye-bye.